The Honourable Member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we know that the results are in. After 9 years of this Liberal government, it is clear that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost for any generation. Food Banks Canada's recent report card said they are nearly 50% of Canadians that feel financially worse off compared to last year, and that 25% of Canadians are currently facing food insecurity. A reality that should be unthinkable in a country like Canada, but instead is a growing problem. The news from the Salvation Army is equally alarming. Nearly 75% of Canadians feel that they are having difficulty managing their limited financial resources, and that 25% of Canadians continue to be extremely concerned about having enough income to cover their basic needs. That is this Prime Minister's record. But, Madam Speaker, those are more than just figures. It's everyday Canadians who are working hard, doing everything that they are supposed to be doing, who are stretching a dollar where they can and cutting costs where they can. But they are struggling just to afford basic necessities. That's because groceries are at record highs and the costs are going up year after year. Families will be paying on average $700 more on groceries just this year alone. And it keeps going. Rents have doubled. Mortgages have doubled. Fuel costs are up. Home heating is up. Taxes are up. Everything is up. Canadians who are already struggling to keep their head above water cannot afford higher taxes and more inflationary spending that drives up the cost of everything and keeps interest rates high. Canadians are desperate for some relief, but this NDP-Liberal government is just not listening. Instead, what Canadians got in the budget was more of the same mismanagement, and more of the same inflationary spending that has resulted in this pain and misery that Canadians are feeling. It's a kick in the gut to Canadian families who are just desperate for some relief. This budget adds nearly $40 billion in new inflationary spending, and it will cost the average Canadian family an extra $3,687. More of the same of what got us into this mess does not help Canadians and does not address the affordability crisis in this country. Conservatives had clear demands in advance of this budget, one of which was to get spending under control. For every new dollar spent, find a dollar in savings. This is a simple, common-sense budgeting concept that Canadians apply to their own budget on a daily basis. Deficit spending is pouring fuel on this inflationary fire, driving up the costs of interest rates. And it's not just Conservatives that are saying this. We know that the Governor of the Bank of Canada has been clear that this government's deficit spending is not helpful in bringing inflation down and lowering interest rates. We know that the Prime Minister has admitted that he does not like to think about monetary policy, but Canadians cannot ignore the repercussion of that negligence. The Prime Minister's reckless spending and taxes forced the Bank of Canada to slam on the brakes with the fastest increase in interest rates in Canadian history. Millions of Canadians renewing their mortgages are facing massive hikes in their mortgage payments to come. That is very real repercussions to millions of Canadians. And let's not forget that while this Prime Minister spends, it is taxpayers that are footing the Prime Minister's bill. They are paying for it today, but you know what? They will also be paying it for years and years to come. This year alone, Canadian taxpayers will spend $54.1 billion to service the Prime Minister's debt. That is more money than the federal government is sending to the provinces for health care. It's money that could be better spent, but Canadians are on the hook for it. The NDP-Liberal government's tax and spend agenda is hitting them from all sides. The carbon tax scheme is adding to the cost of food, fuel, shelter, and just about everything that Canadians buy. The PBO has already proven that the vast majority of Canadians are worse off under this carbon tax scheme. Certainly, in rural communities like mine, the negative impact of the carbon tax is even greater. Rural Canadians are punished. They're punished for just having to drive a couple hours for a medical appointment to get to work, or even just to go the extra distance that is required for them to get groceries. But, Madam Speaker, there are no alternatives. But the Liberals stand in this place day after day after day to try to spin a different narrative. They try to tell Canadians that, you know what, you're better off. And Canadians are just not buying what they are selling. And now we know that those Liberals are knowingly promoting deceptive marketing practices. Their own economic analysis has proven that the carbon tax is hurting Canadians, but their solution is to hide the results. We know that the PBO is under a gag order. Quote, "We have been told explicitly not to disclose it and reference it." Those are words of the PBO in committee when asked about the government's economic analysis. The PBO was clear that his office had seen the Liberal government's own analysis, and it confirms the report that the PBO had already published. The results don't fit the NDP-Liberal government's narrative. So instead of acknowledging the misery that they have caused Canadians, they have simply hidden the results. But, Madam Speaker, Canadians don't actually need to see the analysis. They know the results. They live the results every single day. They feel the carbon tax impact every time they pump fuel at the gas station, open up their energy bill, or pick up groceries for dinner. The NDP coalition does not care. Even in the midst of growing poverty and food insecurity, they hiked the carbon tax anyway, and they're hell-bent on quadrupling it even farther. They have proven time and time again that they don't care if families are struggling to put food on the table, even though they have failed to meet every single environmental target they have set for themselves. They are obsessed with checking the carbon tax box. We see that activist-driven agenda with their obsession that they have to punish our farmers. The Prime Minister is fighting tooth and nail to keep the carbon tax on farm operations. The carbon tax is increasing the cost of food production and is a huge hit to the bottom line of our farmers. Farmers are paying astronomical carbon tax bills, not to mention the GST that is charged on top of the tax, a tax on a tax. These bills, Madam Speaker, are jeopardizing the viability of their farm operations and food security in our country and also abroad. The carbon tax scheme also fails to recognize the valuable contributions that farmers already make to protect the environment. Environmental stewardship is the cornerstone of farming practices. Not only does the carbon tax scheme fail to recognize that, it limits the ability of our farmers to innovate. Bigger and bigger hits to the bottom line of farm businesses means there's less and less money to reinvest in new technology. Filling up government coffers on the backs of our farmers does nothing to safeguard the environment. It's counterproductive, and it certainly does not help make food affordable. When food is taxed at every point in the supply chain, consumers will pay for it at the checkout, and they are. Only common sense Conservatives will axe the carbon tax for everyone for good. Madam Speaker, this budget proves that the NDP-Liberal coalition is not taking the affordability crisis in this country seriously. Every time the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance stands up in this place and tells Canadians how they're better off than they truly are, demonstrates how out of touch they truly are with Canadians. And Canadians are desperate for some relief, Madam Speaker. Only common sense Conservatives will bring down interest rates for good by axing inflationary taxes and placing a cap on government spending. Thank you.